It's really hard to complain about having that kind of energy and buzz at 3 o'clock on a Friday afternoon with full bellies and a drizzly, cold day outside. But we're here, we're continuing to connect, and we've got some wonderful speakers lined up to finish the afternoon. It's my pleasure to introduce the first of those. He is a friend, a colleague, a member of the management and organizations faculty here at Ross, and a central member of the group that leads thought around the world on positive organizational studies. David Mayer is going to be speaking to us today on a topic which could hardly be more timely, gender equality in the workplace. He'll be sharing a number of ideas, the importance of the issue, the role for men and how we can become more involved in that push for equality, and also some very practical steps that you can take away back to your workplaces. So without further ado, please welcome David Mayer.
So about 2.5 years ago, I was invited to give a talk to a group of undergraduate women here at the University of Michigan. They were interested in applying to the business school, but like a lot of business schools, there was some type of a reputation of feeling that this was a really competitive place to be, that maybe it was a less hospitable place for women. And so the idea behind this workshop was to give some information to these women, allay some of the concerns they might have of being here, and to, in general, get them to apply and to not self-select out of the process. That was the idea. And I was really honored. So the Michigan Business Women, they invited me to be a part of the panel. I was happy to come in. I thought, oh, good, they want me to provide a male perspective on the culture here. And so I was really pleased. I thought maybe I could have some impact here. So the event took place upstairs, 6th floor here, Ross Colloquium, and 150 women in the room, all around these round tables. And up in the front, there were 3 tables set up for the panelists. So I wouldn't know who was on the panel, but it turned out there was 7 of us, 5 women, and 2 men. And I thought, who's this other guy that they have up here on this panel? And then I saw the name and I said, what is going on? This guy's almost like my clone. They found another short, white Jewish guy to be on the panel also. And so my pride from being invited turned to consternation. What did the organizers think? Were they thinking, who could we get that's a man but as close to a woman as possible? Let's go with the short Jewish guys. They'll be fine. Then I had to take a step back and say to myself, what's going on here? Why am I feeling so insecure about this topic? I study this stuff. I self-identify as a feminist. I have an opportunity to do something good here. Why am I having this type of reaction? And it turns out, based on a lot of the literature we have, masculinity in many ways is quite fragile. Is that shocking to you? Yes. I'm going to show you some data that further supports that idea, but it really has important implications when we think about how do we get men more involved in thinking about gender equality issues at work. So let me put a word up here, emasculate. Do you know what the female equivalent of this word is? What's that? Usually people don't know. It's defeminized. So maybe somebody said it. If you do a Google search on emasculate, you get over 1 million hits. If you do it on defeminize, you get about 50,000. So we have 20 times more hits when it comes to emasculate. Now, why is that? What it might be telling us is that men are highly sensitive in this space, right? We're worried about it. What does it mean to be man enough? How does that feel? And there are important implications around this. In fact, there's a theory in psychology that really helps us understand this more. It's aptly called precarious manhood theory. And here's the idea. Manhood is something that is difficult to achieve, but easy to lose. I'll say that again. Manhood is difficult to achieve, but easy to lose. It's precarious. We have to demonstrate that we're a man in various different ways. We have to be unemotional. We have to be logical. We have to be assertive. And so we have a lot of scripts in line for how we're supposed to actually behave. And it turns out when our masculinity is threatened in some ways, it leads to a host of problematic and dysfunctional behaviors. So let me give an example. Here's one of the classic studies in this space. So imagine you come into a room. So this is a research study. You see this mannequin, all right? You see a pink bow there, and you're told that the purpose of this research is to do a hair braiding task. We want you to braid the hair. All right, now look at a parallel situation. Same mannequin, same pink bow, but this time we're calling it something else. What are we calling it? A rope strengthening task. So what happens afterwards? You get a choice. You can either choose to do a puzzle or punch a punching bag. What do men do? Well, when men are in the hair braiding task, they're significantly more likely to choose the punching bag, to be able to assert some aggression after having to do something so feminine as braid. And in fact, they do it with more force. Let me give you another study. You come into a lab, there's a computer set up, we're doing a knowledge test about different areas of life, some of which are more masculine, some of which are more stereotypically feminine. So we have things like sports, auto mechanics, home repair, things that are more masculine, and things that are stereotypically more feminine. Fashion, childcare, cooking, and then you're going to get feedback about this. So you take your test about how much knowledge you have about these areas, and you're given this false feedback. So you're told that, for men, for example, you're told you have a lot of knowledge about sports. Or you're told you have a lot of knowledge about these things that are more feminine. What happens afterwards? Men, but not women, feel a lot more threatened. They experience significantly more anxiety. Let me give you one last one. You come into a lab, there's a marketing study about consumer products. You have a choice. Or the experimenters are telling you which one you'll get. You have hand lotion. It's fruity. It smells good. Makes your hands soft. You try that out, and you're supposed to evaluate it. Or you get to test out a power drill. All right? And afterwards, you have a task where you can gamble. Do you know what men do who have the lotion? They bet a lot. They bet a lot more. And with these effects are not just in the lab. We find them in the field, too. And so we're being playful with this, but some of these are really serious outcomes. So when men fear they're going to lose their job or actually lose their job, they experience more anxiety, depression, and lower self-esteem as compared to women in that situation. This may be one of the most powerful studies of looking at breadwinners. These researchers got access to data from Denmark where they had income data and they had data on prescriptions. And so what they wanted to do was to see for men who are married and heterosexual couples, when their wives made more money than them, what was the result? It turned out that men in that situation were more likely to have prescriptions for erectile dysfunction medication. The idea that it was the physical manifestation of feeling emasculated. And we're not even immune to this here at the University of Michigan. I don't know if you remember this, but a couple of years ago, Michigan was having a great season in football. They were 9-1. They were second in the AP poll, and they went to Iowa City for a football game. Does anybody know what's sort of unique about playing at Iowa? Has nothing to do with the field. The locker room. What color is the locker room? It's pink. The lockers are pink. The urinals are pink. This may be their first time seeing a urinal. That's what it looks like when it's pink. Everything in there is pink. And so what are we going to do? These 6'3", 280-pound men, and they're surrounded by pink. How could they ever go out there and compete and play hard? So our coaches had a solution. We're covering the walls. Do you remember this? Anyone? They covered the walls. We had Michigan, we had blue and maize everywhere. So there were banners up, there were photos, there was paraphernalia. And so how did we do? We lost 14-13 on a last-second field goal. It didn't work out that well. So I bring up all of these examples just as a way of saying this notion that may be part of your intuition. We have a lot of science around this, suggesting that when men's masculinity is threatened in certain ways, it leads to a host of unfortunate and often dysfunctional reactions. It can be their anxiety and depression, and also, unfortunately, how they relate to women. they're more likely to endorse sexist attitudes and beliefs, more likely to think sexist jokes are funny. And so we can see that men are socialized in a way that's not working out very well, particularly when their masculinity is threatened. Okay, so I'll address one potential elephant in the room. We are in a Me Too, Time's Up era, and I've gone on for a while now about all this research about why it's hard to be a man. Are you feeling that? A little bit? Okay. And you may not have noticed, but I'm also a white guy giving this talk too. You did notice that? Yeah, okay. I thought what could possibly go wrong? Yes. And so what I want to try to do is convince you that taking the lens of men, actually understanding the psychology of men and masculinity is going to be a really important step if we want to do something about gender equality. And let me provide a few reasons why. So one is, unfortunately, men are largely the perpetrators of this misconduct at work. And so it's kind of hard to even see all these faces up here right now. But again, the Me Too movement, the Time's Up movement, they brought a lot of awareness to this, that men are disproportionately likely to be committing these types of offenses. A second thing, men are disproportionately in positions of leadership or power in organizations. I just put one statistic up there, but you can cut it a lot of different ways, and in general, men are more likely to be in positions of power. Perhaps more disconcerting is that a recent Lean In survey found that 1 in 10, or half of men, think it's sufficient when 1 in 10 senior leaders at their company is a woman. So men are in power, but then don't necessarily see that it's a problem that so many of them are in power. Third, we've already been asking women to lean in, and they are, and I'll show you some data showing how they are. And that's definitely a piece of the puzzle, the extent to which women are assertive, negotiate, support other women. Very useful for this. But perhaps we place the onus too much on women, and what would this look like if we also sort of address issues around men in this space? So these are some of the data I mentioned. I'll explain this to you really quickly. Really fascinating study over 40 years, 74 to 2012. So what you see up there are the data for women. The dashed line, that's about characteristics that are traditionally thought of as feminine, and I'll say stereotypically, so kind, caring, humble, nurturing. And you can see women have pretty much stayed the same there. They haven't gone up and they haven't gone down. But that other line there that goes up, those are more stereotypically masculine qualities. Things like being competitive, assertive, things like that. Again, stereotypically. We see women have actually made a lot of progress. What do you think men have done? We're flat. We haven't gone down. Please don't put the hand down. But we haven't changed. Men have not changed very much. Whether you look at the dash line, which is about femininity, or the other line that's about masculinity, men are not adapting particularly well or very much. A fifth thing, women and minorities tend to be punished or penalized if they advocate for diversity. Some recent studies by Stephanie Johnson and David Heckman have shown that when women and or ethnic minorities advocate for diversity, they actually face some type of backlash, whereas white men don't face that type of backlash. So I use this all as a backdrop to say, why am I focusing so much on men in this space, and the importance of understanding the sort of psychology of men and how feeling sort of threatened in some ways can lead to some dysfunctional behaviors. And if we had a good understanding of why do men come to the area of gender equality with the mindset they do, then we could create interventions that could create positive change. So let's move to that. Let's talk about some potential solutions. For the past 15 years or so, I've studied gender, but I've also studied morality. And I tend to think about this in terms of bad seeds and bad deeds. So when we think about bad seeds, these are people that might be a little bit more like in the photo that I showed earlier. I'm less optimistic that we're going to have a lot of movement with some of the men who have engaged in really harmful behaviors. But I don't think that's the dominant sort of percentage of men here. There are a lot of men who have committed sort of bad deeds, And we can think about reasons why. It could be what's in it for me. It could be self-interest or greed. But my guess is what underlies a lot of it are two things. One, fear. So what happens if I stand up and I advocate for women? What would be the response? What would people say? What would be the reaction? And then awareness. The idea that you might have really good intentions, and yet the behaviors that you would engage in could actually be dysfunctional, and it could actually hurt women. So let me mention 7 things here that really quickly that I think are ways that we can be really proactive and think about interventions, things we can do in organizations. So one is about this encouraging men to mentor women. Men are about 50% more likely to be mentored or have a sponsor than women in organizations. And some people have talked about, sort of in response to the Me Too movement, that some men are actually being less likely to want to mentor. So about 50% of men say they fear some type of repercussion if they mentor a woman at this point. They're afraid to do so. Does anybody remember when Mike Pence talked a little bit about this? What's the Pence rule? You know? What's that? Yeah, don't be, so he would never go out to dinner with a woman unless his wife was there. So I don't want to talk about intentions, because I think he could have good intentions for this. But the outcome is negative. It hurts. It's a sort of paternalistic mindset that actually ends up hurting women because they don't get the time actually with potential mentors. Educating about gender stereotypes. So this is one we talk about in class a lot too. Typically, women have a gender stereotype about being warm, about being nice and likable, and men have a stereotype about being competent. So we talk about this about warmth and competence. And one of the key findings here is this double bind for women, that it's very hard to be seen as both competent and warm, right? So there has to be a trade-off there. And so one thing we can do is by educating men and women, because we actually both fall victim to these stereotypes, that if we educate both men and women in organizations, we're more likely to allow women to be seen as competent and warm at the same time, which is closer to reality. We could be high or low in both of these, men and women can. Third, this idea around benevolent sexism. I touched on this with talking about Mike Pence, but the research on this shows that historically there was more of a focus on what we call hostile sexism. So this would be more overtly not liking somebody of the opposite gender. So if I'm a man, I just have really negative feelings about women. The data suggests that this has gone down over time. It's still there, but has gone down quite a bit. We see a lot more of what we call benevolent sexism, which could be some type of paternalistic attitude, like putting a woman up on a pedestal, which perhaps you think is useful, but actually has detrimental effects. I remember going for a jog at the YMCA here in Ann Arbor maybe a year ago, and I was listening on my headphones to this interview with CNN's Jake Tapper and Anthony Scaramucci. Remember the mooch? Yeah, we only had 11 days of the mooch. But he was trying his best. I really believe he was trying his best to help Sarah Huckabee Sanders. And I wrote this article about it, Harvard Business Review, because he ended up doing almost everything wrong, even though I think he had good intentions. He talked about her appearance. He mentioned her basically being warm, but said things that would put her competence into question. And I think we can talk about benevolent sexism. It's a tricky topic, but I think that we can talk to people in a way that's sort of in an educational way as opposed to vilifying. Ensuring pay equity. This one just seems easy. This seems like a no-brainer. There's very little variance on what people think is right on this one. We still have this pay gap. There's an interesting company called SumAll. This is what they said. We're just going to make our pay transparent. So everybody knows what other people get paid. Guess how big their gender pay gap is? They don't have one. And they've performed very well. They also have lower levels of turnover than others in their organization. You could see some costs of sharing that information, but it's doing well for getting rid of this pay gap. Gender policing. This is the idea that there are certain norms and roles that men and women are supposed to play. And when they deviate, it's our job to make sure that they get in line. And so we have research showing that women can be punished for being assertive, that they are also punished for not being helpful. But it's true for men. There are strong backlash effects against men. When men are more agreeable, when they are more vulnerable, when they show emotion at work, particularly sadness, they're penalized. They're evaluated less favorably. And so this is an issue on both sides where the policing around gender is, I think, hurting both men and women. Thinking about representation in management. When I talk to my MBA students, my female MBA students, they are highly attuned to this. When they're recruiting for a company, they're on the company website and they look at the photos. They see who's on the photos and are women represented there. When companies come to campus to recruit, they pay a lot of attention to who actually comes here. And is it all men? Is it men and women? When the women come, do they seem like they're at a high level? Do they seem like they're on even playing field? And this is influencing whether they decide to work at a company or not. And this is significant not just on moral grounds, but on practical grounds. Within a few years, women are going to be 60% of college graduates. So if women are self-selecting out of your organization, this is a really big problem. And finally, around family-friendly policies, not just on having them, but actually encouraging employees to use them, and then not having any penalty if they do. So if a woman takes maternity leave, then she doesn't get any type of penalty for that. She doesn't have to go on what's called a mommy track or something that could derail her career. And men, even when there are paternal leave programs, they are far less likely to use them. They usually don't use them because they think like, well, as a man, I'm supposed to provide and I should probably be here and doing this. So it's not as socially acceptable for them. So here I mentioned 7 different things that we can do. Let me just wrap up here with just a few concluding thoughts. I think we're really in unprecedented times when it comes to this topic. This is a big one. It's in the news all of the time. And it can also be a downer. My wife will often text me or we talk at night and it's like, shoot, like what's the next story? Who's the next man that we're hearing about? Who are we And so that's what we're hearing a lot about. And it's upsetting. It's really disconcerting. But as someone who's studied this for a while, and I've been really watching this sort of movement around men and their role in this space, I do have some optimism. There is a strong movement towards a more sort of positive form of masculinity, a more modern form. And these are just a few of the organizations that are doing this. Good Man Project, the Mankind Project, Lean In's doing this with their allies. And we're even doing this at Ross. A few years ago, a few of our students, our male students who wanted to really be allies to play a role, became part of the Manbassadors. So these are men who are trying to be ambassadors for gender equality. This is something that's caught on at several business schools, and I think is a really exciting trend. And let me end by just on a more personal note as we think about this, about what might be an overarching solution to a pretty complex topic. I care about this from professional reasons, in terms of studying and teaching this, but also on a personal level. Like a lot of you here, I'm sure, I'm a parent, so I have a 9-year-old daughter and a 5-year-old son. And I can tell my daughter is just right at that age where she's going to get messages about her body. She's going to get messages about what it means to be bossy. And I know for my son, too, he's sweet, he's sensitive, he's emotional. And I can tell it's just right around the corner where he'll also start to get messages that he should be unemotional. That's what a man should be. That he should always have the right answers. And so I think if we take the same mindset that we have for our own kids, where we're really compassionate towards our own kids and don't want them to be jailed in by these gender roles, and we took the same type of mindset and put into organizations, that we don't want these boys and girls, these men and women organizations to have to fit into these strict guidelines, I think we're going to do a lot to address gender equality at work. Great. Thank you very much.
Another one of these with a message for you. Okay, so our next speakers are going to come up. I'm really pleased that I get to announce them. 2 students, BBA graduates. They also have leadership positions in the Plus Lab, which is a student lab for positive business organizations where they learn all sorts of things, and they've held leadership roles in that. And they've been overseeing the Positive Business Project, which is really looking at businesses out there, what amazing things are they doing, and we like to highlight them. So I'd like to introduce Grace French. I had her as a student, wonderful student, most amazing student, and Isabel Fetter. I'm sure she's amazing. She hangs out with Grace, so I know she is. So come on up, and please welcome them.
Hi, everybody, and welcome to the Positive Business Project session. My name is Grace. I graduated a couple of weeks ago, so super excited about that. Thank you. Thanks, guys. This year, I was super excited to lead the Positive Business Project, or co-lead, with Isabel.
Hi, guys. My name is Isabel. I also graduated a few weeks ago. Thank you. The business school wasn't able to get rid of us quite yet, but not until we announced today's awardees for the Positive Business Project. But before we do that, we created a short video to tell you a little bit about this year's team, the competition, and what it took to get to today.
Welcome to the Positive Business Project presentation. We are so excited to share with you some of the awardees from this year's competition. Each company that applied inspired us, and we loved hearing about all the different ways companies are using and spreading positivity in the workplace. Before we get started on honoring our winners, we want to tell you a little bit more about the Positive Business Project and the team.
So the Positive Business Project is an annual student-led initiative hosted by the Michigan Ross Center for Positive Organizations, and it's aimed at identifying, studying, celebrating, and spreading positive business practice of all types.
I joined the Positive Business Project because I wanted to learn about what it takes to be a positive business and the many practices that can elevate a company. Being able to craft the competition and read through all of the 40-plus applications was eye-opening.
I think that business can be such a positive force in the world. The companies that really demonstrate this principle to me are incredibly inspiring, and it's great learning about positive practices that can help to implement as a change agent later on in my career.
I came to Ross to immerse myself in learning what it takes to build healthy, thriving organizations where leaders achieve business results while empowering their employees. Participating in this effort has felt like an incredible opportunity to gain insight into tools, tactics, and practices that will make me a more empathetic and motivating leader.
I have always believed that businesses can make a positive difference in communities. A lot of times that message when you're in business school out in the real world ends up lost. I really got engaged with the Positive Business Project because hearing all the practices that these businesses do gave me hope, energy, and inspiration that I can make that positive difference in communities that I feel strongly about. Over the past 5 years, the project has evolved and changed in a few different ways. This year, the team decided to divide the project into 3 different categories: environmental stewardship, community stewardship, and employee empowerment.
The applicants are taken through 3 rounds of judging. Submissions to the PBP are reviewed by the PBP team, then a panel of students, Ross professors, and business leaders, and finally, the platinum judges. Tonight, we will recognize the top 5. 4 gold awardees and 1 platinum.
In order to receive a gold award, the practice was judged based on replicability, impact on business objectives, originality, and impact on community, employees, or the environment. Through 2 rounds of judging, these businesses rose to the top.
The Platinum Award is not necessarily given every year, and the top leaders and thinkers of positive organizational scholarship review all applications to see if they believe that that company deserves its highest honor. This year, we were excited to honor one of the applicants with the Platinum Award.
The rest of the presentation is going to be about each awardee and their positive practices, so stay tuned.
All right, well, thanks so much to the team.
Before we move on to talking about the gold and the platinum awards, we just want to give a quick shout out to our silver awards. So we have Vistaprint, Arbor Teas, Disher, and Smart Pony. So quick round of applause to them.
So now we're going to get into presenting our 4 gold awardees. So we're going to talk a little bit about each of their practices and then invite them to the stage to give them their award. So first, we're going to talk about 15.5. So 15.5 is a continuous performance management solution that helps employees grow and develop. They're based in San Francisco, California, and we're honoring them today for their Question Friday practice. So every Friday, they ask each of their employees 3 questions. How are you feeling? What's going well? And what challenges are you facing today? 15.5 believes that by engaging with their employees in this way allows them to check in, have open communication, and open feedback. So with that, we would like to invite 15.5 to the stage and congratulate them. Congratulations. Congratulations. It's nice to meet you.
Yes, of course. Thank you.
Woo.
Is that it?
No.
So next, we would like to honor Balance Massage Therapy. Balance Massage Therapy is a therapy studio located right here in Ann Arbor, Michigan. So if you need a massage, they're not too far away. And we're honoring them today for their Defining the Shift practice. So every employee, when they come in for their shift, chooses 3 words that is going to define the way that they work that day. So let's say it's February 28th. Kind of seems that way with the weather today. But we have their 3 words: planned, focused, and teamwork. So that employee chose those 3 words to really emulate the way that they're going to work that day. And they believe that by doing this, they're redefining part-time work, allowing their employees to be empowered through their work and set intentions for each of their shift. So with that, we would like to invite Balance Massage Therapy to the stage.
Congratulations. There you go. Congrats.
Congratulations. Thanks for being here. So next, we would like to honor Elzinga and Volkers, which is a construction management company located in Holland, Michigan. So we are honoring them today for their corporate mapping program. So they have maps that are across the corporate level, the division level, and the employee level with their U maps. So each of these maps outlines best practices, the way that they're going to go about their business, the intentions that they set, and they believe by having these maps at each level that they're creating cohesion across their company. Now, although they couldn't be with us here today, we would just like to congratulate them and give them a huge round of applause for being a Gold Awardee. We'll have to mail them their certificate. So last but certainly not least, we would like to honor Rootie as a Gold Awardee. They are a positive strategy and culture change management company located in Sylvania, Ohio, and we are honoring them today for the Rootie Awards. So this is like a night at the Oscars for rootsters, as they call them. Ooh, oh my gosh. Rootsters, as they call them. So you can nominate a fellow rootster or employee of Root for outlining each of these 7 core values: creative excellence, fun, engagement, collaborative design, servant leadership, and authenticity and giving. So if you feel that another rootster is really emulating these 7 values in their work, you can nominate them for a Rootie Award, and then they all get together and celebrate, flying in from all over the country. So we would like to invite Root up to the stage.
Congratulations. Congrats, Rachel.
And Rachel was actually in our shoes this time last year presenting, so welcome back. So I'm going to pass it off to Grace to tell you about our Platinum Award.
Thanks, Isabel. So we're super excited this year to introduce our first Platinum Award ever. It's the highest honor in the Positive Business Project. And to get here, the company went through a lot of different judging processes. And the Positive Organizational Scholarship leaders decided that this company deserved the honor. So we'd like to say congratulations to Urban Ashes. So Urban Ashes is a design and fabrication company. They're located in Saline, Michigan.
They use a lot of refurbished materials while they're designing and fabricating, and a lot of the companies started by using ash trees when the ash borer went through the area and decimated a lot of the trees in 2002. Besides that, they focus on hiring from returning citizens and youth who have been touched by the juvenile justice system. So Urban Ash is reclaiming trees and lives. Not only are they having a business that's environmentally sustainable, but they are also making a huge impact on the community and giving their employees a place to thrive. So this is a quote from Paul Hickman. He's actually in the audience. Give a wave, Paul. We feel that this quote really encompasses why we chose them and what an impact they're making on their employees. We feel we are giving people the opportunity to reclaim their own lives. When people are believed in and given the opportunity to prove themselves, they can do amazing things. Helping people in this way is contagious. As you can see, they have gone through a couple of different spreading practices, and one of their biggest practices that we've seen spreading community engagement is that they've developed a tech education program for the Michigan Department of Corrections. And with that, I'd like to congratulate Urban Ashes and invite them up to the stage. Come on. Congratulations. Congrats, guys.
Should I give this to you?
Congrats.
Good job. Congratulations.
Congratulations. Thanks, guys. So I know we just clapped a lot, but let's give one more round of applause to all of our awardees. If you want to learn more about the practices that we've discussed today or other practices we've learned about in the past couple of years we've been in this project, you can go to thepositivebusinessproject.com. It's easy to remember because we're the Positive Business Project and you just add .com at the end. The Positive Practices Handbook, which is highlighted above here, that will give you access to a bunch of different practices that you can feel free to use in any of your businesses that you have today. And with that, thank you so much for your time, and we hope to see you soon. Nice job, we did it. Okay, wait. That's for you. That's for you. Thank you so much.
Okay, our next speaker, I'm just so honored to have the opportunity to introduce him. He has dramatically changed my life. And that's hard to convey, but I think this will. I met a woman in the bathroom today. Where else, right? A week ago, she saw a video of Bob Quinn, and she decided she was coming to this conference. I mean, that is the impact Bob has on people's lives. He moves them that deeply. He impacts them that deeply. And it amazes me to think about how deep, but also how vast his impact has been. So please help me bring to the stage Bob, who's going to talk about positive organizations and things you can do.
I'd like to address the single most frequent question that comes up as we go across the planet trying to share positive organization scholarship, positive leadership. It comes up time and time again. 2 years ago, we did a session here when people had an opportunity to submit questions. It was the most frequently asked question. And here's the question. How can I introduce the notions of positive leadership and positive organization in my setting when? Would you take a pen or a pencil and complete that sentence? Would you finish it? Go ahead. I want you to go to work. All right, I'd like to collect a few of these. What's your response? Throw them on out here. Now, okay? Yeah.
When other executives act in contradictory ways.
When other executives act in contradictory ways, right? That is an incredibly common conclusion to this sentence. What else?
When the administration is going to change.
The administration is going to change anyway. Or, my boss is a monster. You want me to tell you about my boss? No one in this company, or in a company of, fill in the blank, lawyers, engineers, count, doesn't matter. You fill it, it goes on and on and on. That is, we come to a conference like this, we get exposed, we get excited, and then we have this horrible notion we have to go home, right? And I go there with a sense of helplessness. That is, there's no way you can do this in my setting, right? Well, I'd like to address that today. This is one of my favorite all-time quotes, right? If I'd asked the customer, he would have said he wanted a faster horse. When Henry said that, he was speaking not about cars, he was speaking about cars and horses, but he was speaking about everybody in this room. You and I get into our comfort zone, we get used to whatever it is we get used to, and we can only imagine incremental improvements. Give me a faster horse. We can't think to ask for an automobile, right? Give me a faster horse, or a better this, or whatever it is we're doing. It's really hard to create what we can't imagine. Now that's an important sentence. It's important to everyone in this room. I'm going to try to explain why. This slide I take everywhere I ever go. That's a list up there that looks awfully negative, doesn't it? And yet, this is what you and I believe. You say, no, not me. From the time we were able to talk, we've been trained and taught that there's authority in the world, and I'm the mother, and I told you to do it. Go do it. And we pick up a series of assumptions that are very common. In fact, this list of assumptions is what social scientists assume about the world. What's wrong with those people? Where do they get these notions? They study me and they study you. That's where they get them. The first assumptions of economics. Man or woman is a self-interested rational actor. Resources are scarce. Conflict is inevitable. This is the same thing. This is the real world. Now, what is this? That is the most frequent answer, right? The moment we recognize that as reality, this is fantasy. And yet when scientists put on the positive lens and ask the question, what is he or she like at her best? What is this team like at its best? What is an organization like at its best? Then this list emerges. The first list is real. The second list is real. Our left brain says that's impossible. It's either or. Those are two realities that exist. We see the one on the left all the time, and it formulates how we think. If I'm a manager and I believe what's on the left, what do? I look at these untrustable people and I build a control system. You know what they do? They resist my control system. Now that's data. That's data. I look at that data and it confirms my theory. You can't trust them. So what do? I build a better control system. And what do? They resist it. That sounds funny, but I would suggest to you that's corporate life. And what in the world turns that into that? And the answer is leadership. not management, leadership. And it's very hard to understand what leadership is, despite the fact we use the word every other sentence. So let's return to this frequently asked question. I want to tell you a story about a CEO who came to this conference a few years ago. He got so excited about the stuff he learned here, he went back to Texas and he told his direct reports, I want to create a positive organization. I want to show you what was not their response. That was not their response. That is, they weren't shocked and they weren't resistant. They had a different response. This was their response. That is, what in the world is he talking about? Right? They could not comprehend what they were at the water cooler trying to make sense. What, because this is the boss talking. What in the world is he talking about? So he kept telling them. And the expression didn't change. Until finally he thought, this is going nowhere. And then he did an interesting thing. He bought some airplane tickets. And he flew his direct reports to Ann Arbor, Michigan. And then he took them to Zingerman's. And for 2 days, they shadowed people at Zingerman's. When they came to my office, I was expecting this. To my shock, I experienced this. They came walking and said, when I get back to Texas, I'm going to do this with the truck drivers. I'm going to try this. I'm going to do this. They were on fire. What in the world happened to those people? These were people who couldn't comprehend what I was talking about, and now, 2 days later, they're on fire. And I'm going to share with you a sentence that is absolutely a golden sentence, and you're going to yawn. You're going to say, that's a useless sentence. I told you, no one's clapping, no one's dancing. Right? That is an incredibly powerful sentence. When you try to talk people into excellence, it never works because they can't imagine what you're talking about. The moment you take and put their hands on excellence, or you have them smell it or look at it, it is data. It's data that distorts all the assumptions they make in that left-hand column. And all of a sudden, it forces someone, when someone gets data that doesn't fit their theory, their view of the world, a terrible thing happens. You have to think. And all of a sudden, they have to make sense of the world. They have to question their assumptions. In 2 days at Zingerman's, they came walking in like this. They were ready to talk. When you are looking for excellence, which we are trained not to do, it's all around us, we don't see it. And you find it, you have an incredible lever for change. Because if it's real, it's possible. And you penetrate all those defenses. Now, with that in mind, I want to give you a tool to take home that will allow you to do that. So if you can't afford plane tickets back to Ann Arbor to go to Zingerman's, here's a tool you can take with you, and you can accomplish the same thing. I want to share with you a case study that is about 2 or 3 days old. It just barely came off the press. And it's a case about an organization that couldn't possibly be a positive organization. In fact, it's impossible. Have you ever visited a utility company? I remember the first time I went to a utility company. It was in the state of New York. I drove up, I parked. There was a chain link fence with barbed wire at the top. Right? It looked a lot like a prison. I went inside this red brick building. They had gray desks, gray walls, gray linoleum. It was a prison, and indeed the people in it behaved like prisoners. A utility company, think about that. This is an energy company these days, but they still have utility work. That is, this is DTE. They do electric and gas. They also do these other things on the bottom line, and they are in fact an energy company. But a big part in their heavy tradition is utility. You can't make a utility into a positive organization. No? It just can't be done. Well, in this case, it's a three-part case. In the A case is the story of the transformation of Jerry Anderson. Jerry Anderson was a hard-nosed, problem-solving, analytic, numbers guy. After spending a number of years in the organization, terrible thing happened, he became president. And as president, he said, for the first time, I began thinking about the whole. That's an important sentence. We are trained to see the parts. Jerry was forced to look at the whole, and it was hard work. In 2008, you may remember, there was a little problem that emerged in this country called the recession of 2008. The epicenter for that recession was Detroit, Michigan. Within the first 2 weeks, they were behind $175 million. That was a real challenge. Jerry had just gone through the company and said to the people, "You are not widgets, you're people." Now that was hard for them to believe. And now, as they sat at the table doing the analysis, the only way out of a high fixed cost company problem like that is you downsize. That's the way out. He said to his people, "I do not want to downsize. We just told them that this company is a human system. If we downsize now, we'll lose them forever." They said, "Okay, smart guy, tell us what to do." He said, "I don't know." CEOs are never supposed to say, "I don't know," right? Jerry did something else you're never supposed to do. He became vulnerable. He said to his people, here's the situation. He was totally transparent. He said, the last thing in the world I want to do is downsize. But we're being forced towards that. I think we can avoid it. Now here's the interesting thing. I don't know the answer. Again, CEOs never allowed to say that sentence. I don't know what to do, but I believe you know what to do. I believe that you carry the necessary knowledge to save this company, and I don't. And I need you to bring your discretionary energy to work. He went back to his office and said, what did I just do? And the first month, the budget guy came in and said, we're ahead of plan. He said, what? The second month, he said, we're ahead of plan. And every month, he said, we're ahead of plan. In August, and it was a cool August, so they were expecting a disaster in terms of finances, he walked in and said, we're ahead of plan. Jerry slammed the table. He said, your model's broken. Your numbers are wrong. The guy looked at him and slammed the table and said, my model is not wrong. Jerry said that moment, his life changed. At that moment, he discovered things that were never available to him before. That his employees were human beings who wanted to do the right thing. His employees had knowledge he didn't have. And when they brought that to the table, there were resources in that organization that were previously invisible to him. In the normal lens, you walk into an organization and it's full of resources you cannot see. When you put on the positive lens, you suddenly see resources that are there that have never been tapped. Jerry went to the board and said, this was the most educational year of my life. And I'm going to start doing things differently. In the second year, and by the way, 2009 was the best year in the history of the company. the same year that GM just went bankrupt, the city of Detroit was falling apart, and this utility company has the best year ever. Now explain that to me. Jerry formulated a purpose. The first half of the purpose came out of a conversation with a woman. She came and said, "Thank you. My husband lost his job. If I lost my job, we'd be in the deepest trouble imaginable. Thank you." He said, "Oh, you're welcome." Thought the conversation was over. And then she said, "You know what? All the people in my neighborhood, they work for GM. They're out of jobs. And the people over in that community, they got these problems. What can we do to help them?" Jerry went back to his office and said, "I can't believe what I just heard. She wants to help people." He couldn't stop thinking about that. It started to click in all over again. And he began to ask, how could we help people? And he came to a conclusion, remember his background, if we became the best operated company in the utility business, we'd have resources, we would be helping them do a number of things, there would be high payoffs. And that was the first half of the purpose, and it became the focus. They became incredibly disciplined around operations. Their progress was incredible. Jerry made a visit to a board member who was General Joe Robles, who was the CEO at USAA. That's a great, positive company. Jerry went to a call center. Jerry knew what call centers are like. It's not very pretty. And these people were on fire. They were smiling, they were happy, they were totally engaged. He said to Robles, "What in the world is going on here?" And Robles said, "Jerry, the highest purpose of a leader is to connect the people to their purpose." And then he showed him a video around purpose at USAA. Jerry came back with a whole new mindset. They made a video. They showed it to union people. When the union people cried, they knew the video was effective. They launched a number of programs, a communication program. Not the kind of communication program we normally see in businesses. It was that, but it was all about you and I listening to each other, speaking authentically. Now, what kind of company was this? A utility company. Are you crazy? We're going to talk to each other and listen? They broke their strategies down, until every person was connected to the strategies in only a way that a utility company could. But it was stunning. The engagement scores started to climb. It was pretty impressive. They didn't know that was just the beginning. The culture began to change. It changed pretty dramatically, in fact. That took us up much closer to the present moment. The numbers, which I'll show you in a minute, were beyond belief. And Jerry said, "I think we're succeeding at the first half of this." The second half was, here it is, the best operating energy company in North America and a force for growth and prosperity in the communities where we live and serve. Jerry had been thinking about that for quite a while. He said, "I think it's time to emphasize the second half." Now, people were scratching their heads saying, "What are you talking about?" They began to work with the Center for Positive Organizations. We began to bring research into the place. And at one point, they said to us, "This is amazing. You're finding what we're already doing. And what you're doing is you're giving us a language for what we're doing so we can do it faster and better. This is really helpful, but we kind of knew it in our experiments." That relationship proved productive in many, many ways on both sides of the partnership. They began to work on that notion of purpose, individually, helping employees think about what was their life purpose. and then collectively as an organization, and then linking the two. And they did some very creative things, again, in partnership with the center. There was a retreat that I had the honor to be a part of, and I've been to many meetings of senior executives around strategy. This meeting was absolutely incredible. He brought these people in, and he said, I'd like to go back to 2009, to a meeting that we had then. At the end of 2009, Jerry said, we just had an incredible year when the rest of the world was falling apart because of the blessing of crisis. In crisis, many organizations come together, and you see potential that's impossible. And Jerry said, now, how do we do that, not through crisis, but through leadership? That is, how do the 11 or 12 of us in this room change our behavior and begin to lead this company so that it's a high-performance company? Now, normally, that gets defenses up. Jerry gave them 5 personal questions. What do you value most in life? Why are you here? What have you learned in this experience? And similar questions, and sent them to their offices for an hour to write answers. And then come back and share their answers. Out of that experience in 2009 came these extraordinary accomplishments. He said to them, now in 2015, how do you feel about that? They say, this is the proudest thing I've ever done in my professional career. He said, wonderful. He then handed them the same set of questions in 2015 and said, go back to your office and come back and tell me what it means for this company to be best for the world. What would you say to your CEO? What vision would you bring? They came back an hour later. It was stunning, the things they said. It would have never happened had there not been that meeting in 2009. And yet Jerry was brilliant enough to tap that meeting. There was a resource there. Out of that process came 5 strategic pillars around best for the world. The number of projects that have come out of that, the scope of the projects, and these have come out of the voluntary efforts of the people, are stunning. Now, sitting in the audience is Sean Patterson, head of HR at DTE. I've asked him to come up here and share 1 or 2 very quick examples. As he shares them, and I don't know what he's going to share, but as he does, look for passion. All right? Sean, come on up here. I don't think, let me try this one.
Well, good afternoon. As one of the things I think is important to talk about in our Best for the World initiative is we really committed to make sure that this wasn't just a bolt-on corporate citizenship, something else on the plate. We wanted to challenge ourselves to think about some confluence of our mission, what our customers expected us to do, business challenges that we had, and things that we could uniquely do in terms of serving out this Best for the World agenda that we wanted to work. So Bob laid out the pillars. And I want to talk about one, the education pillar. So here's our business challenge. In the next 5 to 7 years, we have 50% of our organization that is eligible for retirement. We also happen to be headquartered in a city that needs access to new economic opportunities. We also happen to be headquartered in a city that currently has a school system that is incapable right now of turning out the kind of talent that we need. We have great jobs to offer. So we thought about this. We could do this the very traditional way, or we could think about what kind of engagements do we need to have in the community to provide educational opportunities. So we've worked with a number of other businesses in downtown Detroit. We started actually revitalized a technical training vocation high school, Randolph Middle School, or high school, which the enrollment had dropped to 60 students And with an infusion of quite a few millions of dollars from us and some other companies, it's now up to 300, and this thing is scaling at double, triple every year. And this is going to prepare kids for some amazing opportunities. Just today at Ford Field, we had 1,000 young students from the Detroit area. We put together 15 of our big suppliers, our company, and had a career fair to introduce high school students to opportunities in our industry and in our suppliers. And we're going to be hiring hundreds of these as interns here this summer. So just some small ways that we're really thinking about these very non-traditional talent portals that is going to provide the economic opportunity that's so needed in a place like Detroit, and going to provide us the talent that we so severely need as the years play out in our business. And Bob, I'll just say, there's just a couple of examples. One of the things that has overwhelmed me as we've worked this agenda is the pride that this has engendered with our employees in all these different areas that we've been working. And that pride begets another level of investment and creativity and curiosity about what we can do. And Bob, you talked about it in your session just before, this virtuous cycle being kicked off. And it is absolutely a true thing and a true experience for us. So a couple of examples, Bob.
Thank you, sir. That is just the tip of the iceberg. If you go through the case and look at all the projects and the ones that have just happened recently, it's stunning. How can that happen in a utility company? Right? All right. So let's just kind of review the history. Go back one. So they're in Detroit, Michigan, 2008. Potential loss, $175 million the first 2 weeks. What happens? Best year in history in 2009. Since then, shareholder return has doubled. They're at 96th percentile in the Gallup measures, comparing to all the companies in Gallup. Safety's at a record level right now. They've won 2 Best Places to Work awards. This is something that Jerry Anderson gets particularly exercised about, and he says, we're a utility company. He always says, we're not a utility, we're in it. But when this talks about this is a utility company, right? No utility company wins the Best Place to Work award. They're the only company ever done it. They've done it twice. Customer satisfaction, #1 in commercial, #2 in residential. Community engagement, #1 utility in the nation. How do those numbers sound to you? It's astounding. It defies economics until you understand that sentence that Sean just uttered. When the people get up proud to go to work in the morning, when they bring the discretionary energy, when they love what they're doing, you've unleashed resources that economic theory and management theory does not unleash. Now, how are we doing? 1 minute? All right, then I'll abbreviate this. I was going to do another exercise. I'd like you to think for a second, how could you take that case home and affect imagination? Just think about it for a second. You don't have to answer. I think there's a possibility there. I think there's many ways that case could be used to help people think about, discuss, talk about what's possible. I think if you combine that with whatever excellence exists around you, and you have people go touch it and feel it, you start to create new conversations. People start to see new possibilities. And pretty soon they say, I'm going to go back to Austin, Texas. Here's what I'm going to do to the truck drivers. If, in contrast, all you do is talk at them about what you learned here, you'll get a very different result. All right, so some tools. The case study is now available. You can access it through that email address. There's some out at the WDI table. WDI and CPO produce these together. There's a blog that comes out twice a week with the express purpose of helping people imagine, that is, their stories or parables, Someone stopped me yesterday and said, she works here in the university. She came to an event a number of months ago, and she said, I went back, I gathered 15 people at my level. We have lunch once a week, and we take a blog and we discuss it and ask, what can we do with that? That's very interesting. It didn't come from the top, it came from her from the bottom up. I spent my summer making 300 videos, 3 minutes each. The purpose is that for a very low price, people can get every day a video, 3-minute video, parable. And the platform asks, what did you learn yesterday? What principle of leadership do you find in this parable? And what can you do today to live it? It also makes it possible for you to do it with other people, so that at the end of the week, there's a learning community, digital learning community, where you say, of the 5 things I tried this week, what was most successful? And if you're in a group of 10 or 20 or 100 or 1,000, and someone says, well, my most successful thing is I went in the boss and told her what I really thought, and she listened. What's that do to me? Whoa, number one, she's taking it seriously. She's really doing it. Maybe I should really do it. 2, we're sharing our best practices. All of a sudden, it's not a leadership development program anymore. It's an organizational change program from the bottom up. People are pursuing their best self at work. And then there's something called the Positive Organization Generator, 100 practices that I can evaluate as a person, and then reinvent those to something that fits me in my context that I can then start doing as a practice, or as a group, we can determine what those practices might be. Those are all ways to reimagine what we're about. They're all ways to get to the far right side of that curve. It's my hope that you're really excited from these 2 days, and it's my hope that you have some tools to take home to help other people imagine what's possible. Thank you.
One more. Okay, wow. Whew. 2 days went by so fast. Can you believe it? How are you guys feeling? Woo! Okay, before we go, we have a couple people to thank. The group that put this together, they've been working all year. Stuart, Sarika Gupta, and Chris White. Where are you? Thank you so much. Okay, so. Do not forget video.
Unforgivable task of turning off the power on my mic, so apologies for that. There's one other person that we have to thank.
Yes.
She's the one who wrote our scripts, and that's why her name's not on it. So we get to call her out now. Her name is Angie Seeley. She's standing at the back of the room, and when you see all of the complexity,
she's the one.
When you try to imagine all of the complexity, all of the moving parts, all of the speakers who flew in from all over the world to be here today, the food, the drum line, the jazz music, the sugar cubes, all of those moving parts, you get a sense of Angie's sense of organization. And just to give you a little insight of an incident this morning that drove it home, when Amy and I arrived at about 8 o'clock to get ready for the 8:30 opening, we were calmly informed by Angie that effectively this room was like a ship without power. There was no connectivity, no microphones, no slideshow, nothing. It was going to be dead in the water, but she had a plan, and she just walked us through the plan, and we were like, okay, I guess that's what we're going to do. And then 9 minutes later, the crack team here got the power back up again, and we were back to business as usual, not flustered, not even disturbed a little bit. It was like, here's the plan, what we're going to do. So working with someone as consummately professional as Angie has been an absolute treat. So thank you again. That's been
Thank you.
Great honor. A few reminders when you leave, please take your sugar cube with you. It's hopefully got some great notes and reminders that will give you some additional food for thought as we leave the event, and there will be literal food waiting for you outside, some refreshments to go just to make sure you don't get, if we haven't been feeding you enough, we don't want you to get hungry on the way home, so there is food to go. Before you go rushing out of here, we have a slideshow, and I encourage you to stay for just a couple of minutes and relive a few of the memories from the conference with some of the images we have up here. It's a great set of images. And just finally, thank all of you. Please congratulate yourselves on a wonderful couple of days, and we hope to see you all next year. Thank you so much.
Thank you.